Did you ever snoop through your parents' things as a child and absolutely regret what you found to this day? What was it and did they ever find out? NSFW. A little late, but I hope someone sees this so they can share my horror. I was laying on the bed with my parents when I saw what I thought was strawberry squeeze candy. They tried to hide it and make me forget about it, but I thought they were just hiding some sweet candy from me and not sharing. So it made me want to try it more. I used my finger to try a little bit from the top and my parents were laughing and I didn't understand why. Took me a couple years to realize. I ate my parents' duckine loop straight from the applicator and it makes me die inside every time I remember. Duck my life. Edit. I was maybe 7 or 8 at the time for reference. I found a beer opener that was shaped like a huge black penis. I put it back, but then years later my younger sister found it and asked them what it was. Their faces were red while I tried not to laugh. Dear God. I remember being a kid and my parents watching a fair amount of shows and movies with graphic sex in it, and I would always play dumb and pretend to have no idea what was going on. Maybe look away or hide under the table or something. But when my sister started to learn, I then got dragged into all the embarrassing conversations. It was awful. After my dad passed away, I searched through the browser history on his computer. Tons of pun and websites for ordering black market Viagra. I didn't personally regret finding it, but I know my mom would have. So I deleted the history and never told her. I found typed letters from my dad to my mom in my mom's room. They had been divorced for a couple years at that time and the letters said some pretty horrible things about her and about how we were being raised. I'm assuming she was keeping them in case she needed them in court. My parents got divorced when my dad was caught cheating on my mom. After the divorce I went to visit my dad in LA when I was about 13. I decided to snoop through his bin of floppy disks and found a very long story he had typed out during the divorce. In it he describes graphic sexual acts with the new woman. How his life would be easier if my mom was to suddenly drop dead. Specifically that he would fantasize about the police showing up at his door to tell him my mom was killed in a car accident. I also learned how his AOL name that he'd been using for years is actually just an inside joke between him and his now wife about the length of his dong. He still uses that name to this day. He did find out that I saw it, and he explained that at the time of the divorce he was seeing a therapist who told him to write the story. I think it was meant for the therapist to read and gain some insight into what my dad was going through. I ended up finding a quite kinky vibrator slash dildo in my grandma's possession. That was 6 years ago, but I still have the image seared into my mind. Maybe she thought it was a neck massager called the bulldozer. I found a riding crop in my parents' wardrobe. I was like, when the duck did we get a horse? Edit. For everyone saying my dad is hung like a horse. He is. I was unlucky enough to get my mum's dong. Found my mum's Hitachi and played with the new microphone. Then I found out it vibrated and started massaging my face and neck. Duck. My mom always used hers on us to get rid of headaches. And honestly I really don't know and don't want to OFC if she ever used it for any other reason but actual massaging, because she never had any hesitation in using it for our migraines. I was definitely like in my 20s before I realized it had any other use, but in my defense it does get rid of migraines very well. I mean, the body ones genuinely were originally used for massage, and then humans were humans. My mum had a really nice surgical grade massage wand. Several $100s. This thing was definitely actually for massage, as it used infrared heat and had a joint in the middle of the handle so you could reach your lower back without straining. And it was manufactured by a medical company. But boy did I steal that thing a lot when I was a kid. Eventually my mum was just like, oh hey sweetie, I know you use my massager a lot. If your back is sore, here's a massager I picked up for you, and handed me a cheap little massager. This one also looked like it was genuinely made for backs, but it was mine and that way I never had to steal hers again. I found my letters to Santa hidden in my parents' socks. Went to get a pair of dress socks out of my mom's dresser. Found a hardcore BDSM pun mag. Put the socks back. Closed the drawer. Changed into an outfit that didn't need dress socks. I was definitely aware my parents were human people who had sex. But I was also 14 years old and just, wow. Found some old nudes of my mom when I was like 11. I didn't realize it was her at first. Man, I have never lost a boner faster. I spent a lot of time in closets as a child. My favorite place to be, in the back of our cedar closet. I found the Santa suit, wig and beard. Childhood ended. Not NSFW. But damn. Found a letter about a kid my mum gave up for adoption when she was 18. Weird to think my mum had a whole different life before I came along when she was 27. My sister snooped in my mom's journal when she was about 13 and found that my mom had also had a child at 18 that she gave up for adoption. I found out by snooping through my sister's diary /view 200D. The Joy of Essex book, illustrated. Some of those hand-drawn pictures. Oh no, my poor innocent childhood brain. I also found this book when I was a kid. Instead of being disturbed, it became my secret pun. I think I found that one too. Is it the one that suggests washing your junk over the toilet with a pitcher of water, and then armpit and hairy leg sex? It was surreal. Me and my brother found a stack of about 50 Playboys in my dad's closet when I was 13. It was awesome for about a year till he discovered we had been messing with them and got rid of them. Then we were all out of pun again, but it was a very educational year. My dad has had a subscription to Playboy since probably before I was born in the early 80s. They were always in the bathroom to read. He still gets them every month. I grew up reading them and didn't understand why my friends thought it was so funny. I thought all parents had that kind of stuff just around the house. He kept a lot of them in boxes in the attic. I'm pretty sure he saved a lot of the real old ones. They'll be my inheritance, I guess. My parents are hoarders. My dad also had a Playboy subscription for years. I was about 7 or so when I finally realized inside the wall rack of saved magazines in the basement there was one shelf that was just Playboy and a few Penthouse and OUI. I finally got caught one night with some, and my mom made him move them. I'm pretty sure. I knew he wouldn't get rid of them though. I found where he kept them in the garage later, and they became my stash until high school. I could keep 5 or 6 hidden in my room and just rotate them out every so often. To think the efforts we went through to see a few titties as a kid. Times have certainly changed. My mom was paced out drunk. Her boyfriend at the time told me to go get the keys from under her pillow. There were no keys, but there was a large vibrator. I was about 12. Those situations change you. Yeah, no. Edit. The vibrator was as long as my forearm. I was going through my dad's hockey bag. Found his cup. Thought it was a face mask. It wasn't till I saw the horrified look on my parents' face that I realized it's not for your face. Edit 1. A cup is a piece of plastic, vaguely shaped like a penis and testicles would, that fits inside a jockstrap to protect that region from damage. Edit 2. Glad to see other people do it as well. It lessens the shame a bit. Oh my god. Yes, I was 8. Wasn't really snooping through my parents' stuff, but our family photo albums, particularly with mine and my siblings as babies. First, I got to my brother's. It was so colorful and bright and filled with notes written by my mom. Same with my little sisters. Then I got to mine. It was boring to say the least. Just plain pictures with no notes or stickers or whatsoever. Then I got to the last page. I remember the exact verbatim of what I read in this small piece of blue sticky paper written by my mom. Is there any more I can say? No. Because we really wanted a baby girl. An 8-year-old boy bawled that day. My dad's journal from before I was born. He was so incredibly depressed. He talked about how my older sister cried on her way to kindergarten, and it was the first time he'd been able to relate to her in years. Totally broke my heart. I've never told him though. That was definitely not meant for me to read. That sucks. Man, depression is a hell of a sickness. I hope Hes doing better. My story is similar. My mom's always been depressed too, and one time I read her journal. 10-year-old me was not prepared to read about her battle with suicidal ideation and all the ways she would kill herself if it weren't for us kids. Shook me to my core and I couldn't even begin to process it. You can bet I've never opened her journal since. Depression is pretty terrible. I think Hes doing a lot better now though. That was a particularly rough time for him. That's horrible. I'm so sorry. I think I was about 15 when I found my dad's journal, and it was rough even then. At 10 I have no idea what I would have thought. My dad's wasn't current, obviously, but he did talk about how he felt conflicted because my mom wanted more kids and he didn't think he could handle it. It was strange knowing how painful my childhood was for him. My memories of it were so good. Hope your mom is doing better as well. When I was a kid there were no such thing as cell phones and we didn't have magazines, so going to the bathroom was pretty boring. One way I used to entertain myself was by playing with a round piece of rubber that sat in the medicine cabinet. I would poke it, stretch it, spin it on my finger. Wasn't until several years later during sex ed that it suddenly dawned on me that I had been playing with my mother's diaphragm that whole time. My mother left her diary open once. It was a few years after my father died, and I read just the one entry on the open page. She was sad that I had been having dreams of him comforting me, and wrote that she hadn't dreamed of him once. It made me feel guilty for years. I never told her. My therapist said it was deliberate. A bright purple dildo, and that's the last time I went in my father's closet. Edit. It also had a hole in it big enough for a finger, which creeped me out. I bet he nicknamed it Barney. I found my mom's big purple dildo and touched it thinking it was something else. Did you think it was a big lavender dildo? I found my paranoid schizophrenic father's diary full of rants, including him accusing my mother of adultery and her denials. It was just so sad and messed up. A really awful peek inside his mind. I knew he was sick, but to get that honest a look inside was far too much for a 10-year-old. I admitted to my mother what I found. When I went back to look at the notebook another time, I saw she dripped out all the pages. We'd run away from him years before. I have no idea why she kept the thing. Close bracket. I wasn't snooping, but when I was about 14 I was helping mom do laundry like I usually did on Saturdays when I was a kid. I went to put away my dad's shirts and found a Costco size box of condoms. It was nearly full. On that didn't bother me. I knew what sex was and figured my parents did it. The troublesome bit was the following Saturday when I was helping with laundry and saw 3 condoms in the drawer instead of 24. I mean, damn guys, it's been a week. Edit. All the suggestions of swinging and orgies have made me think about my parents' sex lives far more often than I like. So thanks. I'm choosing to go with the balloon animal theory. After my dad passed away I found some letters sent to him from his family that dated 40 years ago requesting him to marry his distant cousin so they can keep the family blood pure. He was 32 and she was 11. Side note, Middle Easterns have this weird thing with marrying underage girls who also are your distant/close cousins. I found other letters from his relatives saying that they are cutting ties from him because he refused to marry and that he is no longer welcomed in the country. They had the power to blacklist him. My dad ran away shortly after the first letter that I mentioned and met my mom, who's Bulgarian, who's also 2 years younger than him, and got married. Honestly, I'm just proud of him. When I was in middle school, my dad had a box at the top of his bedroom closet filled with hardcore porn on VHS. Later, when my folks weren't home, I watched a bunch of it with my friends. It made me very popular. No regrets. My mom used to make dolls out of used pantyhose. It was a thing in the 80s. A creepy thing. But it happened. Think Cabbage Patch premise but out of pantyhose. I found one in her closet in a box. I found one in her closet once. It was a man with a fake fur beard and an enormous DCK, like enormous. I'd never seen one in real life, so it caused me much anxiety. Also realizing mom was making naked man dolls. For what reason? Why? Mom, why? When I was little I always liked going in my parents' closet. Their closet is above the garage, so it is massive. There aren't any windows, so I liked going there during the day, to be in the dark. They kept a lot of random stuff in the very back, so I always thought it was fun to go through. It wasn't until it got around Christmas time, when my parents said I was not allowed to go in their closet anymore, which naturally made me want to go in there even more. I waited until they were distracted with something and went in. I went to the very back where I like to explore, and found a bunch of wrapped Christmas presents. A few weeks later I got those same presents but from Santa. This really confused me as an 8-year-old. Why would Santa bring the gifts early, just to have to come back later to out them out on Christmas Eve? I guess it must make it easier and definitely would make the sleigh lighter. Not as a child, but as an adult. And it's not gonna be NSFW. Just sad. I was spending a few days over to my mom's house in the countryside, and she was cleaning up some of her stuff. I stumbled upon a diary that dated back to 1992, when I was barely a year old. I was curious, so I asked her if I could read it. She said yes, but warned me that I might not like what she had written in it at the time. I went ahead and read it anyway. And what I learned was that my father never cared much for me. Even back then, he'd still do drugs and smoke pot with me in the next room, and let mom pay for everything pertaining to my needs. I brought the diary to my mom, and asked her if my father ever loved me at all. Her diary still in my hand. She sat me down, and confessed that, when she was pregnant with me, she knew she wanted to have me, but my father never did. What I regret is having the absolute certainty that one of my parents never did love me. Before, there was always a sliver of hope, but now, I know my father never really loved me. Edit. I never thought so many people would react to my story. Y'all are crazy. Lovely people. Also, thanks a lot for the gold and silver awards. They are much appreciated. Edit 2. I've shared most of your reactions to my post with my mom, and she's incredibly grateful for all of your kind words. She always felt like she should have done more, but relaying as much of your replies as I could to her seems to have appeased her. TLDR, you people helped a mother find some peace, I think, and both of us thank you for your kindness. Like this video and this good boy will be your mailman forever. We are Redditation, and we Redditate every day. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a wonderful day you magnificent people.